We now join Pav as he discusses Kohberger's Sunday morning whereabouts.
So when you talk about Kohberger's home here at Steptoe, and you go to this Washington Trust Bank, the fastest route is to go past that airport where they didn't get the windy.com footage.
Okay, here we go with the windy.com crap again. First of all, that camera is Washington State DOT, and they hold their footage for several days. So it's not like Idaho DOT where they don't retain their traffic cam footage. Washington DOT actually does preserve their footage, so you don't need windy.com for that. But as I talked about before, you are forgetting the update intervals. These are not live stream cameras. Also, by the way, the Pullman airport one doesn't show cars going by on the actual roadway. It only shows things at the airport. Let's take a look at that. So you can see this is the terminal ramp. Doesn't show airport road. This is the windsock. It's basically showing the airport runway. Doesn't show the roadway. Oh, this is the airport terminal. And this view from the northeast also is just showing more of the airport and the runway, not the roadway. But even if it showed the roadway, it's going to be hard to have caught Kohberger's vehicle if he went by because it updates every 15 minutes. So you'll see this said 9:22 a.m. and then it didn't update until 9:37 a.m. So 15-minute intervals. So you know how many cars can drive by in a roadway in a 15-minute time frame? Like I said before on the last video responding to Embry about windy.com and these traffic cams, it's like a needle in a haystack to find a car going by when these cameras don't refresh for several minutes and they're not live streams.
Once they realized that Kohberger did not go to the residence and he actually went to that ATM machine, you can see through the self-authentication of records. And by the way, I had people put in my comments on my video yesterday, you don't know what cameras they got. They got 100 cameras throughout Moscow. Well, ding dongs, if you read the court record, you'll see that all of the business cameras and all of the traffic cameras would be self-authenticating record cameras. And when the prosecution submits their list of cameras that they're going to be using that are self-authenticated, you're only going to see in trial what was on their self-authentication list, unless it was a private camera. And you're not going to see any private cameras because it wasn't listed on the FBI report. So no, those out there that think that there's hundreds of cameras that are going to show footage, not one of those is going to be shown in court. Only what's on their self-authenticating records.
Actually, Pav, you are incorrect about the private cameras. Just because they aren't on the self-authentication with the business cameras, and just because they aren't listed on the ones the FBI submitted on that one document, doesn't mean they won't be introduced. If you read this disclaimer, it says, the following is intended to be a summary of the collected surveillance footage and is not intended to be an all-encompassing report on the entirety of the collected videos. So what that tells you is there is more that they are submitting. This report was not all of it.
You have to dig and dig to find the truth. The truth is in the self-authenticating records when you go to Washington Trust Bank records and images for Brian Kohberger. Now, it doesn't tell you about the ATM images of Kohberger that morning in this record. You have to continue to look and go through other records. And then you'll see there's a certification for self-authentication, and it lists ATM transaction images on Washington Trust Bank. That still doesn't prove it was that morning, Pavarotti. No, you have to find the record that proves it. Washington Trust Bank records for Mr. Kohberger, and a PDG documents of images of Mr. Kohberger in his car at the ATM on the morning of 11/13/22. So undoubtedly, he was at the ATM that morning, 11/13/22, making a withdrawal, and they have images of it.
Okay, I'm just curious which branch he went to, because Washington Trust has a Pullman branch and a Moscow branch. Now, Pav seems very sure that he was at the Moscow branch, but why would you drive from Pullman clear over to Moscow just to use an ATM when there's an ATM in your own town for that same bank? So that doesn't make sense that he went over to Moscow just to use an ATM. So I'm curious why Pav thinks that he was at the Moscow ATM when there is a Pullman branch on Bishop Boulevard. So just wanted to put that out there as some food for thought, because nowhere in the documents does it state which ATM branch that was. At least none of the public release documents show which branch he is caught on video at. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments.